When done well, custom Yu-Gi-Oh cards can be an awesome and creative way for Yu-Gi-Oh players and fans to show off unique themes and styles of cards that Konami might not print. And that's really cool, and I think when they are done well, they are very exciting to look at and to analyze. If you remember a couple weeks ago, I reviewed all of the Toon monsters that Simply Unlucky made, and those were awesome. I mean, those had really cool, unique artwork. They had unique effects that sort of paid homage to the older cards that they were based off of, and overall I loved them a lot. And I think I said that in that video. Even though those cards weren't necessarily competitively viable, which is perfectly fine, they were still very unique and something that I felt was a step above most custom cards. Because let's be honest guys, the custom cards in Yu-Gi-Oh just over the past like 10 years that people have been making them, they're not very good, and I'm at fault of this too. When I was a kid, I made a lot of custom cards. They were all pretty bad, but I think that we can make them better, because if we look at communities, if we look at games like Hearthstone, they have a very vibrant and active custom card community, and that's great. That's something that I wish Yu-Gi-Oh had. But overall, from what I've seen, and I've looked at a lot of custom cards, I mean, if you guys have been longtime subscribers, you'll know that just about a year and a half ago, I actually reviewed custom cards multiple times. That was one of the bigger series on my channel when I was just getting started and sort of starting to grow. And after that, I had to stop, because first off, I was getting way too many requests from people to review their custom cards, and one of the things that I started noticing as I got so many requests, which I wasn't really used to at that subscriber count, was that almost all of them suffered the same issues over and over again. So I just stopped reviewing them entirely, because no one wants to be told that their custom card is bad. I mean, I understand that. I create things. I don't like being told my videos are bad or the cards that I create are bad. So I understand where people are coming from, but I think we have to be honest with ourselves, look at the custom cards that are being made and say, how can we make these better? So in today's video, I'm going to go through the basic types of custom cards that are out there and how they can be improved upon, starting off with the ones that are most common and also the worst ones of the bunch, custom cards that are based on pop culture, usually made by people that do not play Yu-Gi-Oh at all. When I think of the early days of custom Yu-Gi-Oh cards, when I was looking at them as a kid, most of the cards were based on either video games or movies or other card games, and that's what the vast majority of custom Yu-Gi-Oh cards out there, especially if you just Google custom Yu-Gi-Oh cards, most of them are going to fall under this category. And what I find interesting about these pop culture cards that people are basing off of, many of them, I mean, if we're just to be frank here, they're just terribly designed. That's why I said that I think the people that are making those don't really play Yu-Gi-Oh, or maybe they played Yu-Gi-Oh as a kid, but I'd say, and this is such a oddly specific thing, I don't know if it's just that back then the custom card creator couldn't do anything else, but most of them are normal monsters with effects, which just looks weird to the eye. But in general, many of them have ridiculous attack points, they have effects that don't make sense, the pictures themselves are horribly cropped, and I think that these are really the bottom of the barrel for custom Yu-Gi-Oh cards. This is setting the bar so low for these other categories, so keep in mind that even though these other categories I'm going to talk about are certainly better than these custom cards based on pop culture, the bar is so low that it's not very difficult, because some of these, while they are interesting in the way that it's like, oh yeah, I know that reference, other than that, they don't really do anything. They're not well designed, and I think this is a huge missed opportunity, because in the case of these pop culture cards, or in the case of the ones that are based off other card games, it could be really cool and could be really unique to actually make effects based on whatever those items or those people or those video game characters are in pop culture. I don't really have any great examples of this, but I feel like there's a lot of missed opportunities, just things that don't make sense, and it's just really frustrating to see, because almost always in all of these cases, there's just pop culture references in the artwork and the name, and then the rest of it is just garbage basically, and that's really disappointing. So hopefully if people make pop culture cards in the future, they actually add some flavor to the effects that make sense. However, I realize that most of the people that create custom cards in 2018, or even in the past like 2 to 3 years, aren't actually making those ones, because what I see nowadays, for the most part, is people that are creating entire archetypes, and that's really fun. fun. You know, you sort of pick a mechanic that you like. Maybe you like discarding cards, maybe you like milling cards, and then you design an entire archetype around there. And these days it seems like all these archetypes, they have a bunch of effect monsters, a bunch of spell cards, a bunch of trap cards, and then like one of each extra deck summoning type. People really like creating archetypes from the ground up, and I totally get that. However, and I've been sent a lot of these, and I mean a lot. I mean, when I was making those custom card review videos, I got so many messages from people saying, please review my archetype. And I got one time, and this is probably like the most ridiculous example, but I had someone send me 40 cards to look at, and it's like, I'm sorry if you're watching this video, I didn't read like any of them. I got bored after the first one, because one of the things that I find in these custom archetypes almost every single time is that they are needlessly complicated. I mean, the text on these cards is insane. I mean, you guys complain about modern cards having paragraphs of text. Just go to a custom card website and you'll see that almost all the cards there, they're so small, the text box is so tiny that you can't even read the effect. That's my favorite one from those custom card forms, is when there's so much text packed on one card that you literally can't read it, and the person that posts it needs to post like a translation in actual text in their post. I think that's hilarious, but it just goes to show that when people are creating cards, they just want to overcomplicate them. They want to make them as crazy as possible, but that doesn't actually lead to good game design. That's when you look at modern Yu-Gi-Oh cards, even though they are complicated, especially compared to old school Yu-Gi-Oh cards, I wouldn't say in many cases that they're needlessly complicated. Maybe cards like Inspector Border could be written a little better, but overall, when you read a card, if you know how to read cards, you can understand what they do. And I don't even want to really talk about, yeah, most of these cards do not have problem-solving card text, even though it's been around since 2011. That's perfectly fine. I would say just in general, a lot of people can't even read problem-solving card text. They haven't cared to look up how to read it, so I can't really expect them to write in problem-solving card text, although I know a lot of people have that gripe with custom cards. And I know it might seem crazy that I haven't mentioned this whole time, but in terms of the power level of custom Yu-Gi-Oh cards, I find that they usually just fall into one of two categories with almost no exceptions, and that is that they're either horribly underpowered, even if they're really complicated. Many times they're just super underpowered, or they're horribly overpowered. And I'll show some examples of both of these cases, but I think in general, when they're underpowered, people are just putting way too many restrictions on them. They're making them way too low attack or way too low leveled, and just not very good in general. A lot of times you see an archetype of like 10 cards, and maybe they're based on pop culture, maybe they're based on a video game, and all of them are just normal summon effect monsters that have like okay effects, but no actual win condition, no way to special summon, no real like good effects on them that are actually worth playing. And I think that happens a lot, and that's okay, I understand that. But in terms of people making cards too good, I think that the biggest thing that happens, at least what I've noticed, is people make cards for an archetype, but they make them too generic, and they end up breaking other cards that the creator didn't think of. Pretty much all the cards, I mean, for example, there's like Marvel cards that someone made, and one of the cards was, when you normal summon this, add a warrior monster to your hand. Now the intent is to add the other Marvel warrior monsters to your hand, but seeing the creator didn't put that in the text box, it just can add any warrior monster in the entire game, which obviously makes it too powerful. So I think that many times the creators of these cards are only thinking of their cards in a vacuum, and what I mean by that is that they're only thinking of their cards interacting with their other cards, not with all the cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And there are a lot of cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! Very often when I see in Facebook groups people posting their own custom card or their own custom archetype, they don't realize, and what commenters point out, that there's actually ridiculous combos with those cards already existing. And I'll bring up another example of this. Not that this example is like terrible or anything, but there was a card sent to me on Twitter the other day, and it was a Danger Fusion Monster, which was a really cool idea. I thought that there was a pretty neat way of triggering the Danger Monsters. And I'll put that card up on the screen right now, and no offense to the person that made it. This card, and I actually replied this on Twitter, so it's not like a huge surprise to this person. This card with only, and I really mean this, with only the summoning requirement of discarding 2 danger monsters to special summon it, if that was the only text that card had, it would be broken. And I truly mean that. That would be insane. And then they add on multiple other effects that are just really crazy, and that's kind of what I mean. I think people just think of these cards in a vacuum. They think of, oh yeah, in a pure danger deck, that card would be very cool, and they're not wrong. A 3800 monster that you can summon by discarding 2 dangers with bonus effects would be really crazy in a pure danger deck, but what the person that designed that card was not thinking about was the danger FTK deck, or any sort of danger hybrid deck suddenly becomes insane because of that fusion monster. So it's not that that card is just being played in pure danger decks, it's all the other danger hybrid decks that are suddenly able to play this monster that can get 2 dangers out of the hand and guarantee their effects going off. Because right now, the whole way that danger monsters are sort of balanced, the fact that their effects are not guaranteed. You don't know if you're going to discard them unless you can whittle your hand down to just one of them. So this new fusion monster would just break them entirely, while also putting link material on the board for even crazier combos. So in general, and I feel like this, it's not the fault of the people making them. It is very difficult to make a balanced card, but oftentimes cards are, I mean, I would say almost all the time the cards are needlessly complicated, but even with the complications that are added to them, they're either really bad or really good. I don't see a lot of balanced cards. Now I will say a good example of balanced cards is almost all the Toon cards that Simply Unlucky made that I talked about at the beginning of this video. Almost all of those are fairly balanced. Now the Exodia card was definitely way too overpowered and more like what I see from other custom card creators, but in general most of the cards in that video were pretty balanced, maybe a little underpowered, but they were about right. I could see most of those cards being printed. I think everyone goes in with custom cards with their own mindset, but when I look at custom cards, I ask myself, could these be printed? Does this look, does this feel like a Yu-Gi-Oh card that could exist? And I would say almost all the time I look at it and say, no way this could ever get printed in any capacity. It would either need to be buffed a ton or nerfed a ton to even see any sort of chance of being printed. So that's kind of like my video here on all these custom cards. I don't want to make anyone angry. I tried to mention at the beginning of this video, I don't just inherently hate custom Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I think it's a fun way to sort of flex your creativity, but I want custom Yu-Gi-Oh cards to actually be worth reviewing. You know, I watch custom Hearthstone card reviews from a ton of different content creators, and those videos work because the cards are worth reviewing. They actually have interesting effects that sometimes are overpowered, but oftentimes they're just new takes on different mechanics that haven't been added to Hearthstone yet. And I would love a weekly series on this channel where I review custom Yu-Gi-Oh cards. I think that'd be really cool. The problem is that there is not a Yu-Gi-Oh custom card form out there that consistently posts interesting and unique cards. And I truly mean that, because I've looked multiple times over the past couple years, because I really think that would be a cool series to have on the channel. When I first started doing that a couple years ago, I actually really enjoyed myself until I realized that many custom cards were exactly the same and sort of had the same issues that I was mentioning in every single video. But if there was like a good form where people posted interesting cards, I would love to review them. I think that'd be a really fun concept, but it's just not out there. And I'm sorry for that, because I think people would want to see it, but I can't review cards that simply don't exist in a capacity worth reviewing. Anyway though, hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Maybe it was full of some hard truths, but I really do just want to see custom Yu-Gi-Oh cards go to the next level, to a point where they're worth reviewing, because I think it's possible. Other card games seem to do it just fine. It's just Yu-Gi-Oh is kind of slacking, and I'm not sure why. So hopefully if you're someone that makes custom cards, this video helped push your custom cards into a level where they're actually worth discussing. Anyway though, thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you later. Goodbye.